The Mighty Miss Malone, Chapter 27, The Letter. Mother had warned me time and time again, but I couldn't help it. One day at school, Mr. Smith got tired of teaching and gave us assigned reading time halfway through class. I had another horrible Penrod book on my desk, but I was really reading what I was really reading was in my lap, The Quest of the Silver Fleece for the fifth time. You can tell you're reading a really good book when you forget all about everything else and know you'll die if you don't get to read at least the end of the chapter. That was what Mother had warned me not to do anywhere but home. But Mr. Ullams had given me more and more books that I loved and I couldn't put down. And that can be dangerous. I didn't tell her the bell. I didn't hear the bell dismissing class. Mr. Smith said, "Well, Deza, I suppose Mr. Talkington and I should be flattered you're enjoying Penrod so much that you don't want to leave, but I've got to lock up." "I'm sorry, Mr. Smith. I was just—" "No problem. You're a real credit to your race. See you tomorrow." As I walked from school, I still had about 10 pages till the end of the chapter. I did what Mother had warned me not to and walked and read at the same time. When I looked up, I'd walk 3 blocks past the post office. Maybe I'd just keep walking home. It wouldn't be a big deal if I came next Friday, but I turned around. I didn't stop reading, though. I knew when I finished the book, my hands would shake, my eyes would rim with tears, and I'd say, "A masterpiece, a work of genius. What a tragedy, a true tragedy that it had to end." I pushed the post office door open and everything froze. Mr. James was holding an envelope over her head and screaming, "Deza, I've been waiting. I think this is it." My book crashed to the floor. I was dumbstruck. She came around the little gate waving the letter. It was postmarked in Cleveland, and it's to you and your mother. I stared at it. This was what I wanted more than anything else in the world, and I couldn't even move. She put her hand on my shoulder. "Deza dear, do you want me to open it?" She picked up my book and led me to a chair. I took the envelope. It was written by a typewriter. Mrs. Margaret Malone and Mistress Deza Malone, care of General Delivery, Flint, Michigan. "Deza, are you all right?" "Oh yes, it's not from my father, it's from my brother." "How can you tell?" "If it was from my father, he would have put all three of our names on it." I turned it over and over. "It is against the law for me to open the letter, or should both me and mother do it?" "Your name is on it, so you can open it." She smiled and patted my hand. "Besides, Miss Malone, I bet it's an absolute impossibility for you to walk all the way home and get there with that envelope still sealed." Father would have been proud of the Flint-style way I ripped the envelope open. Mrs. James picked up the pieces and says, "Dear me, Dessa, I know you're excited, but this is the U.S. mail, sweetheart. You have to be respectful." I unfolded the page inside. I expected one of Jimmy's terrible drawings, but the letter was typed. He must have got someone to do it for him. "Dear Peg and darling daughter Deza." I looked at the first words over and over. It didn't make sense. Why would Jimmy? And then it hit me. This wasn't from Jimmy. It had to be from Father. I stopped breathing and had to read each sentence twice before I could understand it. It was Father. "I have missed you two so much. Every day has been a heartache for me. Don't worry, I'm fine. I have asked a friend to type this since I hurt my right hand in an accident. It's not very serious. Still able to work, but I can't hold a pen properly. The doctor told me it will take maybe a year before I'm completely healed. Now for the great news. I have found work as a traveling carpenter. I make good money and travel all over the country. I will send money every 2 weeks. We will be able to rent a house in Gary before much longer. I hope this finds you well and in great spirits. Love, Father." I read it again and again. The fourth time, though, I had to stop. Tears were clouding my eyes so much I couldn't see. Mrs. James said, "Oh, please tell me it's good news, Deza." "Oh, Mrs. James, Father's okay. He's got a job. He's working as a carpenter." We fell into each other's arms. "Child, I'm so happy for you." She handed me something that had fallen out of an envelope when I ripped it apart. It was a piece of paper that had been folded and taped shut. Out fluttered two of the greenest, brightest, cleanest looking dollar bills I'd ever seen. I picked up the money. They weren't dollar bills. They were $5 bills. I had never seen this much money in my life. "Oh, my Deza, in the future you must treat that mail with more care. Look at this." "Are these real?" She took the bills. "I went into the wrong profession. I should have become a carpenter." I hugged her again, but Father's letter in my through put Father's letter in my book and flew home. I couldn't wait to see how flabbergasted Mother was going to be. As soon as I got home, I started arguing with myself about how to give Mother the good news. It isn't the way of the Malones to come right out and tell anybody anything, so I had to think up a good way to surprise her. Should I pretend I was so sad about seeing that she'd pull me into her lap and say, kisses, 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 make you stronger, and then give her the letter? Should I put the letter under her pillow to the next morning? So the next morning she'd find it like the tooth fairy had visited? The more I thought about it, the more confused I felt. I put on my Hotel Durant blouse and blue gingham jumper. When I climbed on the bed and read the letter for the fifth time, I started crying. I don't know why. I remembered how my tears messed up Clarice's goodbye note. So to be safe, I got up and put the letter in our new file cabinet under the mattress. I curled back up on the bed. I wished Mother would hurry home. I didn't want to, but I bawled and bawled and bawled, and that's how Mother found me an hour later. I pulled the letter out and handed it to her. She didn't act near as excited as I thought she would. She kept looking from the letter to the two $5 bills. She flashed her 111 lines before she said, "Oh, Deza, isn't this wonderful?" Her heart wasn't in those words. Maybe it was just relief. Maybe you can hold on to something bad for so long, and when you put it down, you don't trust the feeling. That had to be why both of us weren't bouncing around the room. "I'm still going to check at the post office every day," I said. "Deza, it says he'll write again in 2 weeks. Why don't you start checking closer to then?" "I'd just die if Father's next letter sat at the post office one day longer than it had to." She smiled. "Fine, but leave the library 15 minutes early and come right home afterwards." That night, I thought I'd have trouble sleeping. But when Mother kissed me and said, "Good night, my darling," the last thing I remembered was 2 weeks, 2 long, slow weeks. Then I know something good was going to happen. I had just left the library when a man called out, "Miss Jones?" I kept walking. He yelled, "Miss Jones." There was no one around but me. I could hear him coming nearer. I closed my book and started walking faster. The man started running at me. I looked for help, but I was on a block of vacant lots and empty homes. "Wait, Miss Jones, hold on for a minute." I turned around and did what Mother and Father always told me to do if something like this happens. I yelled at the top of my lungs, "My name is not Jones. Leave me alone. Someone help me. This man is bothering me." I took in a deep I took in a breath to keep yelling, but the man stopped and put both of his hands up. "Whoa, whoa, it's me, Sawbone Z. Don't you remember from the camp? The harmonica man? I'm sorry, Missy. I mistook you for Jimmy's sister." "Mr. Z, you scared me to death." He laughed. "I thought that was you. How are you and your ma?" "Do you know where Jimmy is? Is he with you?" "Y'all ain't heard?" "Oh, please, Mr. Z, if it's bad news, just tell me." "Bad news? Your brother's doing real good. I thought for sure he was writing to y'all. Must have gotten lost in the mail." "Please, Mr. Z, what happened to Jimmy?" "He's doing just grand. He's singing in nightclubs." "What?" "It's like I told y'all. If there was anybody who could squeeze a penny or two out of folks in these hard times, it would be him and that voice." "You aren't traveling with him? He's all alone?" "Well, now, that's sort of a sore subject with me. Jimmy's fell in with a shady manager, calls himself Maxwell. I got cut loose." "Do you know where he is?" "He travels a lot on the Chitlin circuit, but I'm pretty sure right now he's singing mostly out of Maxwell's nightclub in Detroit. Joint called the New Turned Leaf." "What's a nightclub?" "That's just a fancy name for a blind pig or a speakeasy. I'd heard lots of horrible things about speakeasies. They were where people went to drink alcohol and fight with each other." "Mr. Z, can you wait so I can write this down? I'm so excited I know I'll forget." I got my pencil and opened my notebook. "So, Jimmy, Sir Jimmy, and my last name is Malone, not Jones." He snapped his finger. "Oh, I forgot. The Maxwell clown had Jimmy changing his name to Jones." "Why? Why?" "Who knows? But ask near anyone in Detroit about little Jimmy Jones, and they'll know who you mean." Mr. Sawbuck Z gave me the address of the nightclub in Detroit. Then he said, "When you see him, tell him I ain't mad. He done what he had to do. I've been in the business long enough to know what's what." "Thank you again, sir, and I'll tell him." I started running home to give Mother the news. Three things stopped me. First, my heart was pounding so hard in my fat and fast, and my legs were so wobbly and weak that it felt like I'd already run a mile. I bent over to catch my breath. The second thing was I could almost hear Mother say, "Deza, that's just a rumor. If Jimmy was making money, you know he'd write to us. Or if Jimmy was as near as Detroit, he would have come to see us." But he hadn't. And the third thing was when I heard my second brain. "Okay, kiddo, you know doggone well Mother isn't going to run to Detroit to try and find Jimmy. In a speakeasy?" My second brain laughed at me, then added, "And you know you don't have half the nerve it would take to even ask her if you could go by yourself." I squeezed down on my back teeth. The second brain was right. I'd never be brave enough to do it on my own. Unless